The truth should never fear examination. That's become sort of the theme for my program. The truth should never fear examination. And the truth about South Africa, it's an amazing land, an amazing country full of fascinating peoples, many different tribes, a dozen or so major tribes with sub-elements of each of those. There's hundreds of elements of the Khoi and San communities. An amazing country. But like many countries around the world, it's been harmed greatly by evil politics. Politicians who are in it for themselves, in it for the greed, and those who seek to divide South Africa and South Africans. The true history of South Africa is one of conflict, dispute, warfare, cooperation, collusion, and a host of other things, just like any other country. But the reality is there are certain politicians that paint this as a country full of a minority of racists who seek to reinstall separate development or apartheid. Nothing could be further from the truth for the vast, overwhelming majority of South Africans, black, white, and brown. Most South Africans simply want to live in peace, worship in the way that they believe, whether they're Christians, Muslims, Jews, or even animist, and raise their progeny to have a more successful life and future than they had. Unfortunately, this idea, this goal, is harmed by politics, and that's the nature of life around the world. But in South Africa, it's particularly venal as corrupt politicians take bribes, get cuts of government contracts, and cause problems for all South Africans. Here as I stand in the Western Cape with this iconic landscape behind me, the Drakensberg back there, looks like dragon's teeth, an iconic view. South Africa's future is very much in doubt. What will happen? The African National Congress has had 8 years to change its course from a party infected with state capture to a party that serves the people of South Africa. And for 8 years, under Cyril Ramaphosa, they failed to do that. In fact, this country's gone the opposite direction. While most people aren't even paying attention, the amount of corruption that's exposed on a daily basis makes the state capture era of Jacob Zuma look like child's play. Child's play. The amount of money that's been pilfered, the service delivery that's not occurred, the destruction of infrastructure, the gangsterism, the murders, 170 murders in the Cape Flats in just a couple of days. The country as a whole averages about 78 to 82 murders per day. And in the Cape Flats alone, they're averaging that in 2 days. Shocking, to say the very least. The Cape Flats, a short distance from this iconic view, this wonderful spot on this planet. What can be done? Well, it's up to South Africans. And I did a video recently talking about voter registration, and some South Africans said, our votes don't matter. Doesn't matter what you say, Chris. Well, fine. You can go down with the Titanic and watch it sink below the waves. Or you can get engaged and stand up like a small number of South Africans are doing through the courts, fighting expropriation without compensation. At this very minute, there's a case before the Western Cape High Court in Cape Town about expropriation without compensation, which is unconstitutional. It violates Section 25 of the Constitution. And let me put this in perspective for the hate wankers in Europe, the leftist blue-haired Tannies in the United States and Europe, and those here in South Africa who say this is just nonsense. That Constitution is not from the National Party. That is a constitution under a so-called free and democratic South Africa, promulgated by a majority black government, enacted by a majority black government, ignored by a majority black government, to the detriment of all South Africans. If you think that expropriation without compensation is about this, about farmland, then you're mistaken. It's about state power. It's about politicians controlling your life. If you deign to speak out against the government now has the ability to punish you without any explanation whatsoever. Under the Expropriation Without Compensation Act that Ramaphosa supposedly signed in Davos, when he actually signed it the previous December in Cape Town, the national, the provincial, and local government can confiscate your property. Not your land, your property, your hotels, your apartments, your houses, your buckies, your retirement funds. Everything you own can be expropriated without any compensation. The concept that nil means compensation is utter poppycock. Nil does not mean compensation. Nil means zero or nothing. And the fact that we're even having a discussion about that is beyond comprehension. But South Africans have a choice. Well, they have several choices. If you have the means, you can immigrate, sadly, to another country where things are more normal. Or If you're suffering from racial persecution, you can take advantage of President Trump's refugee program to go to America, or you can stay and fight for your country. But it's up to South Africans to make that difference, not foreigners. No one's coming to rescue South Africa. That's self-evident over the past few decades as the country has slid right off the table. South Africans have to stand up. If you've bothered to register to vote in November, go vote for a party that can give you 50+1, as long as it's not the people who put you in this position. Reporting from the Western Cape, this is Chris. God bless.